the state down here is basically boredom. Because you have a skill set. You may be a fantastic programmer, but you're driving a taxi, whatever it is. So you're under challenge, you're disinterested in what you're doing. Actually, I doubt that it's true here at Google, but in the working world at large, disengagement, which is what this is called by HR people, is an enormous problem. People will just do enough to keep their job. They're not interested, they're not engaged, it's not good work. However, what they do here is daydream. And daydreaming is another attentional state that has value. Every kind of attention has a purpose and a place. It's when they're out of place, they're a problem. Daydreaming, it turns out, is what the brain chooses to do 50% of the time. There was a study, a psychologist at Harvard gave people an iPhone app that called them at random times of the day and asked them two things. What are you doing now? And what are you thinking about? In other words, is your mind somewhere else? Are you daydreaming? That's the 50% data. The most daydreaming was when people are commuting, sitting at a computer terminal. I'm sure it's not true of the people in this room, but other people. And work, generally. By the way, this axis, the metric for this is levels of stress hormones, particularly adrenaline and cortisol in the brain. So if you're way up here, it means you're having what's called an amygdala hijack. The amygdala is the part of the emotional brain which is the radar for threat. Our amygdalas right now are answering the question amygdalas have asked all through evolution. And it is, am I safe? Is there a danger? That's what the amygdala cares about. The brain, you have to remember, was designed for survival. The neocortex, the part of the brain that we use all the time, that was like a later, it's still a beta. It was added way later in evolutionary history. And in fact, the brain is designed still to give precedence to the survival mechanisms. So if the amygdala thinks there's a threat, it can hijack the rest of the brain, particularly the prefrontal area, the part of the brain we take pride in, the part of the brain that manages attention. And the amygdala has a privileged position in the brain. One neuron long connection from the ear, from the eye, from the senses. So it gets an instant picture of what's going on. The amygdala has a hair trigger mechanism. It has kind of rather be safe than sorry point of view. So it calls emergencies when actually there's not really an emergency. And just to complicate it, we now live not in the biological reality where there are saber-toothed tiger type threats, but we live in a complex social reality. So the amygdala is misinterpreting social signals or interpreting them. People who are in this state, which there was an article in Science about that state called The Neurobiology of Frazzle. People who are frazzled have an attentional hijack going on because one thing the amygdala does is redirect attention to whatever's upsetting us. If you're having a problem in a relationship, you're going to be thinking about that problem at times that you might want to be thinking about something else, or like 2 a.m. when you want to be sleeping. That's the amygdala. It forces our attention away from where it might be if we were here to what it is that's upsetting us. It also reshuffles memory. Memory is in a hierarchy. So when you're having a fight with your partner, you can't really remember so well, why am I with this person? That's how the amygdala works. So this is an attentional state which is very inefficient, particularly when people ruminate. There's a difference between constructive worry and rumination. Rumination is thought loops you can't stop thinking about that are upsetting, and you go over the same thing over and over. Constructive worry is when you think about it, the amygdala wants you to think about it, and you come up with something you can do, and then you stop the thought. You can go back to having more voluntary control over attention.